Alrighty, folks, we are starting to see some articles finally discussing the reason that home prices did not crash. Thankfully, these folks are finally getting to the meat of the issue. It's only 2 years too late. The net of why home prices didn't crash is a couple of things. First and foremost, something known as price elasticity. Wow, easy for me to say at 7 in the morning. Basically, what that means is prices are sticky on the way down. How does this work in practice? Well, first and foremost, if you are a seller and you put your property on the market for $400,000, for example, and over the course of 60 days or so, you do not get any action, you as a seller can take it off the market. What are we seeing? This year, every single month this year, delistings are higher than last year. Now, something else you could call this, and I have called this, is wish pricing. We have sellers who undoubtedly saw prices in 22 and think their house is worth that. Unfortunately, buyers do not agree. Obviously, interest rates have doubled, and only a few could afford such a large jump. So the first reason home prices did not fall is that's just how the system works, price elasticity. Number two, and this is why everybody who claims that the next GFC is here is so wrong. I'll just say wrong. I'll just leave it at that. And that is something known as shelter cost. If you understand the seeds of the GFC, it was in variable rate debt, 2-year notes that would reset. And then that would take your shelter cost from, say, $1,000 to $3,500. And the story at the time was you just refi till you die. You don't ever actually pay that higher rate. Now, of course, that didn't work out in practice. And when your shelter cost goes from $1,000 to $3,500 and a similar home only rents for, say, $1,500, you then walk into strategic default. Of course, today we don't have any or almost none of that because 90 some odd % of loans are fixed. In addition to that, we have shelter cost that is fixed for a lot of folks below rent. Again, there is no urgency to leave. And then finally, one area that I think is worth noting is foreclosures. We essentially went on a 2-year hiatus where, for most part, foreclosures were simply not processed. There was extend and pretend, there was lie and tweak, whatever you want to call it, it did not happen. Now, as we fast forward and we roll into 2026, I certainly believe foreclosures will rise. They will probably rise on a percentage basis significantly, maybe 40, 50, 60%. We will see a lot of folks who have homes listed who took them off, aka delistings, try again in the spring, right? What will the spring housing market bring? And we will go from there. So again, more and more folks are talking about, hey, we were wrong. The housing crash didn't happen. We didn't understand the economics, but it's been fun to watch people backpedal, frankly, who were so certain that a home crash was coming. It never showed up. Don't know if you guys are invested in Nvidia, but if you are, I've got good news for you. Cantor Fitzgerald just raised the price target from $240 a share all the way to $300 on Nvidia called at Cantor Fitzgerald. And if you do the math on shares outstanding, that means that Nvidia would be worth $7.3 trillion. Yes, $7.3 trillion. I remember the days when we were talking about companies worth $1 trillion. Now we're potentially talking about a company worth $7 trillion. That is wild. I do want to remind you that we have a very special session occurring this Sunday inside school. We are going to go over a presentation I've been working on for months called How to Get Wealthy. We're going to go through it slowly so we can interact and ask questions. And I hope to see you there. It is 8:30 a.m. on Sunday. I've allocated 90 minutes. Normally that presentation's between 45 and 60. So plenty of time for questions, tweaks, conversation. So I hopefully will see you there. If you're not a school member, you still have time to sign up, and I will see you there. Ray Dalio's in the news again, saying the stock market feels a little frothy. Yes, according to Ray Dalio, we may be on the cusp of a bubble brewing. We did get some earnings. We'll go top down. Pepsi beat top line, beat bottom line, but the story's not all that great. Pepsi's performance was international strength, not domestic. In fact, the domestic performance by Pepsi was rather weak. Delta Airlines missed on revenue, but beat on earnings, and they also raised guidance. Delta basically says the richy rich keep spending. Luxury travel is here to stay. And then we go on to Ferrari. Ferrari, I believe, produces the most beautiful cars, actually lowered their expectations. And something, something I found interesting was by 2030, Ferrari expects to have 40% of their portfolio be gas-powered, 40% hybrid, and 20% electric. I could not imagine how fast an electric Ferrari is going to be, but hey, it will be a sight to see, I am sure. We did get the Fed minutes yesterday, and as expected, we had a divided Fed. Actually, I think it's even more important than that, because if you read the Fed minutes, at least to me, it sounded like the Fed was okay with not cutting. Again, as we know, it was ultimately voted 11-1 to cut. But if you actually read the Fed minutes, it certainly seems like multiple members wanted to not cut, which again is not the feeling we got when Jerome Powell was at the press conference. So I think that is net new information. Again, as we recall, the dot plot came out 10-9, meaning that there was just a majority of 2 cuts remaining in the year. Odds of October and December cuts are over 80% as of right now. So again, interesting to see how we finish up the year. A lot of Feds, more and more Feds were concerned about inflation. Again, folks, inflation has been above the Fed's target of 2% for 4 years now. So, pretty hard to have a target that you've missed 4 years in a row. But the Fed, as of right now, has that. I read a very interesting article from a company called Flex Strategy Group, specifically their CEO and founder, Kyle Yost, talks about the fact that we are going to see a collapsing workforce. Basically, the net of the article is over the next 5 to 7 years, we are going to see 6 million Gen Xers leave the workforce. I thought that was interesting. Again, we've heard about the silver tsunami, but now we're seeing my brothers and sisters, because I am Gen X, starting to think about retirement in the next 5 to 7 years. The IRS, yes, folks, the IRS is furloughing an additional 34,000 people. That is roughly 47% of the workforce. Yes, the IRS is furloughing 47%. I do want to talk about an interesting video we did yesterday with Matt, the mortgage guy. Matt, the mortgage guy, brought up an excellent question that I had not thought about. You can watch the video, but I'll give you the net. Matt, the mortgage guy, had a client who was 2 years into a 30-year mortgage. So he had 28 years remaining. In this case, I think the interest rate was in the 7s. This individual wanted to do a refinance, which makes total sense. You can get in the low 6s or with buy downs in the high 5s. Makes perfect sense. But in this case, the individual was not doing this for cash flow, right? It wasn't, hey, I need to save $200 because I'm living close to the edge. It was, hey, let's refi and let's go from 28 years remaining to 20. Think about this. Going from 28 years to 20 left, he got a much lower interest rate, because the shorter the term, the lower the rate. I think it's in the 5s. You can watch the video for the details. But what was interesting is if you whack off 8 years and you get the lower interest rate, his payment only went up like $100 because of the shorter term. But when you look at mortgage pay down, instead of paying down $400 a month on the older 30-year mortgage, you're now paying down nearly $1,000. So again, I don't think this is for everybody. I think a lot of people do rate and term refis because they need that extra $100, $200 in their life. But if you're in a situation where you live below your means, you have an extra $100, you won't feel it. I think some of you, and again, I've never talked about this, I think some of you might want to look at a refi and take out time. Go from a 30-year fully am to a 20. Go from a 20-year fully am to a 15. Again, it's an interesting conversation. I suggest you do the math because I think in this case you saved like 240 grand in interest. That is interesting to me. Another note from the Fed minutes is it appears more and more Fed presidents are talking about the housing market, specifically risk of the housing market collapsing, which is interesting because we have been in a depression for multiple years, and this is just getting your attention, which I think is kind of interesting. Again, folks, everybody knows or should know on this channel that real estate collectively is about 13% of our economy. We have been running below trend for years, and we need this to come around, hence the focus on rates. Looks like Japan has a new prime minister, and one of the things that is interesting is this new prime minister looks to be leaning in to stimulus. Said another way, money printer go burr. Yes, no more raising of rates out of Japan. They are going to try to stimulate. And then finally, I've got some numbers on the impact of the government shutdown. Again, yesterday we talked about the government shutdown impact on residential, but I really didn't know how bad. I found an article that said every single day, right? Every single workday, Monday through Friday, about 2,500 mortgages are initiated or would be initiated through Fed programs. So think about that. Every day that this ticks by, there's 2,500 loans not being processed. Now, in fairness, a lot of those loans will be pulled forward or made up when it starts again, but it is going to be a mess because we are at now day 9. We are now longer than average. If you remember from October 1st, the average length is 8 days. We are now 9 days, and frankly, no sign of movement. I think the 15th, October 15th, is an important day because that is the first day we will ask our armed forces to not get paid. So that could up the level. But I got to tell you, this smells like a long, drawn out process to me. And again, I hope I am wrong. Folks, don't forget, Steadily is the sponsor of the Daily Financial News. If you are a landlord, you owe it to yourself to get multiple quotes. Insurance is expensive and getting more expensive. Do yourself a favor, give Steadily a shot. They help Olivia and I more than half the time. Not all the time, I'm not saying they do, but more than half the time they've given us better rates and better coverage. Maybe they can help you. Maybe they can't. But until you try, you don't know. All righty, folks, take care. Have a wonderful Thursday, and we will be back with the Daily Financial News Sunday morning. Later.